Alright, this will be the first couple pages of the first semester exam review, which will also be a good review for Accuplacer and STAR. So let's look at the first couple pages and go from there. Alright, on this first one, we're solving a linear equation. So the key is you have to remember about distributing and make sure that you do that. And this negative will have to be distributed too. So we're going to end up with 4x minus 5x plus 10, and that equals your 9x minus 14. Alright, now we're going to combine all the x's on the left side, which 4x plus a negative 5x is going to be negative x plus 10 is equal to 9x minus 14. Add x across, so we're going to add x to both sides. I'll do this one step at a time. That becomes 0, and you're left with 10 equals 10x minus 14. Okay, then you're going to add 14 across. Bring down your equal sign, and so you're left with 10x equals 24. And then you need to divide by 10. So x is equal to 24 tenths, and then you have to reduce that fraction. Each will divide by 2, so that will give you 12 fifths as your final answer for that problem. Okay, the next problem, number 2. We again have to distribute, but this is a positive, so we don't have to worry so much about watching signs. But you're going to have 6x plus 6 minus 2x. And for some reason, when there's just an x, we tend to forget to distribute this 2 across, and we'll just put a minus x. But that equals 7x plus 1. Combining our x's on the left, you have 4x plus 6 equals 7x plus 1. Subtracting 4x from the left and doing the same thing on the right. And then we're going to subtract, that'll get us our x's over here, those become 0. 6 equals 3x plus 1. Now you're going to subtract 1 from both sides. So 5 is equal to 3x. And then when you divide by 3, x is equal to 5 thirds. Okay. Now we're going to move on to problem 3. It's a little longer. We still have to distribute this negative 3. Again, watching out for the negative. You have 6x minus 18, and then you have plus 15x, and you have another plus 3x that's still there, equals 10 minus 8 plus 4x. That's distributing the negative 4, distributing the negative 3 on the left. Now on the left side here we have 3 x's that we're going to have to combine together. So we have 6 plus 15 plus 3. So that's, they're all positive. So that will be 24x minus 18 equals, and on the right hand side we don't have but one x, but we have numbers. So 10 minus 8 is 2, and we still have our plus 4x. Now we get all our x's on the left, so subtract 4x. I usually move them so that the x will stay positive. So that becomes 0. On the right, 24 minus 4 is 20x. Minus 18 equals 2. Then I need to add 18 to both sides. So that adds to be 0. and you have 20x equals 20. So when you divide both sides by 20, x equals 1. And looking at the fourth problem here, we distribute our 2, so you have 2x minus 6 equals 4x. Subtracting 2x from both sides, you have negative 6 equals 2x, and you divide by 2, and so you have to remember that that's going to be a negative, so negative 3 equals x, or x equals negative 3. Okay, those are the equations. Now we're going to look at some inequalities. Now inequalities are solved pretty much like an equation, but you have to remember that if you multiply or divide by a negative in that last step, you've got to turn your sign around. The other thing is if there's an or here, that would mean that if you graph it on the number line, and we'll graph this answer on the number line, you're going to be pointing out. Your answers are going to be pointing to the outside, and they don't overlap. So you're going to have two separate equations for your answers, not one equation for your answer. So let's answer each of these. We have 3y plus 6 is less than 15. So you're going to subtract 6, and you're left with 3y is less than 9. When you divide by 3, and this 3 is positive, so nothing happens to the sign. When you divide by 3, you have y is less than 3. Now when we put that on the number line, here's 1, 2, 3. Have an open circle on y, and it would be, let me change colors just so that it shows up a little better. It would be an open circle, and it would color to the left. Okay, that's how that y is less than 3 would graph. Now let's go back and solve the second equation, where you have 1 minus 3y is less than negative 11. Okay, I'm going to subtract 1 from each side. So you have negative 3y is less than negative 12. Now this time, it doesn't matter that this is negative on the right. This is the one that matters. That's the important one, that what you divide by is negative, or what you multiply is negative. So since we are dividing by a negative 3 to get 1y, then we have to turn this sign around. And so it's going to be greater than positive 4. And you notice that it is an open circle again, and we would have 4 here if we continued on our number line, and that solution set would be an open circle on 4, and greater than would go out in this direction. Okay, so that's why you have two equations as your answers. So your two equations, both of them are your answer, and it would be y is less than 3, or y is greater than 4 would be your answer. Same with number 7. You've got that word or, so your answer has to be two equations. So we'll go back to that one in a minute, but looking at number 6, it's put together. So our answers should be together. You can make this two equations if you want to, or you can just solve, but remember you have to go to either side of the inequality. So first we're going to get the x by itself in the middle. So you're going to subtract 4 here, and subtract 4 here, and subtract 4 on the right. Bring down your signs just like they are. This adds to be 0, so you're left in the middle with a negative 2x. You have a negative 10 on the left and a positive 8 on the right. Now when you divide by a negative 2, again, that's a negative number, so that means switching signs. Okay. So we're going to divide each of these by negative 2. And so you have positive 5 is greater than, that's going to be 1x, which is greater than negative 4. But when you write your answer, you don't write it like this. You write it with the lowest number on the left. Or in number line order is another way to say that. So I'd write negative 4. Since it's pointing to the negative 4, this sign's going to point to the negative 4. When I rewrite it, x is still in the middle, and the open end is towards the 5, so I write it like that. And that's your final answer. And it will be written, if it starts as one equation, it's going to be written as one equation. And what that means in terms of the number line is if I have 0 here, 1, 2, 3, 4, negative 4 here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, it says that negative 4 is less than x, or you could read it, x is greater than negative 4. So what we've got then, we've got an open circle, and x is going to be this way from negative 4, but it's less than 5, so it's got to be this way from 5. So my solution set is all those numbers between negative 4 and 5. And so when it's written as one equation, that's what it would look like if it's graphed on the number line, as opposed to arrows that were pointing outward away from towards each end. Let's look at number 7. It should graph with numbers pointing towards each side or each end of the equation. So we've got two equations. Negative 4y plus 8 is greater than 16 minus 8 minus 8. And then so that leaves us with negative 4y is greater than 8. When you divide by a negative 4 again, dividing by the negative means I have to turn the sign around, so y will be less than negative 4. Looking at the next equation, we have 3y minus 5 is greater than 5. Adding 5 to both sides, you have 3y is greater than 10. Dividing by 3, since that is not negative, that sign stays as it is, so y is greater than 10/3. Okay, putting it on a number line, 10/3 is 3 1/3. So we'll go up here to 1, 2, 3, 4, and go down 1, 2, 3, 4. That'll be negative 4 down there. Okay, so let's graph. Y is less than negative 4, except I can't divide, if you caught that. That should, 8 divided by negative 4 is not negative 4. It is, negative 2. Okay, so we only have to go to negative 2 here. Okay, so it's less than negative 2. So less than negative 2, the arrow would go this way. Greater than 10/3, that's greater than 3 1/3 right here. And arrow point this way. So yet again, when we have that two equations to start with, it's an or. It's both equations that have to show up as individual equations rather than one equation with the variable in the middle. So bear that in mind as you work these problems. All right, let's look at the next page, and then I'm going to stop, and I'll do, a couple pages at a time on this review that I load to YouTube. All right, absolute value equations are important. and you could easily see those. These are inequalities. The first two are inequalities. Number 10 is an equality. When you have an absolute value inequality, your answer has to be expressed as an inequality. So what we'll have we have 2x minus 3 is greater than or equal to 5. And you set up another equation, 2x get rid of some of those strokes. There we go. Okay, and we have 2x minus 3, and we need it to be negative 5. Well, that's the same as multiplying through by negative 1. On the right, this doesn't change because the absolute value doesn't change. So this would be, we have to turn the sign around. So you have to remember that you have to turn that sign around when you set up the negative equation. All right, so we're going to add 3. So 2x is greater than or equal to 8. And when you divide by 2, x is greater than or equal to 4. Okay. Then for this one, you're going to add 3. But since you're adding it to a negative, 2x is less than or equal to negative 2. Then you're going to divide by 2. Again, we don't have to worry about the sign. So x is less than or equal to negative 1. And so those will be your two answers for that absolute value inequality. Again, the answers will also be inequalities. Okay? Now, when it's greater than or equal to, you have an or. So you have two equations. When it's less than or equal to, then you have one equation. Okay. Now again, draw it on the number line to be sure. Putting it on the number line will tell you how that works. So we're going to set this up. 2x plus 4 is less than or equal to 8, and 2x plus 4 is greater than or equal to negative 8. Again, turn the sign around and make the answer negative. Subtract 4. So 2x is less than or equal to 4. Dividing by 2, x is less than or equal to 2. Subtracting 4. 2x is greater than or equal to negative 12. When I divide by 2, x is greater than or equal to negative 6. So thinking again about how do I write this if I don't remember, think about a number line. You have negative 6 here, 0 here, 2 here. It's less than 2, and it's greater than 6. So these lines are going to overlap. So that means you're going to write it as one equation. Write the lowest number first. Negative 6 is less than or equal to x, which is less than or equal to 2. Okay. And you can go back and verify this one. If you're not sure, draw your number line here. 0, you've got negative 1 on this side, 4 over here. X is greater than 4, or equal to, so that's going to be a closed circle going to the right. Less than or equal to negative 1, closed circle going to the left. They're separate, so you need two equations. Right, on number 10, you have an equality. So your answers are going to be 2 points, two numbers. So we have x plus 1 equals 3, and x plus 1 equals negative 3. Subtracting 1 from both sides, we have x equals 2, and subtracting 1 from both sides here, x equals negative 4. So it's those 2 points would solve that equation. Now on these next ones, we have the equation of the line with the following conditions. First, anytime you find a line, you need to find the slope. So let's write out here The slope is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. The point slope formula, y minus y1 is equal to m times x minus x1. And lastly, we have y equals mx plus b. That's slope-intercept. In standard form is ax plus by equals c. So this is standard form. This is slope-intercept. And this one, whoops. This one is called point slope form. And that should be Algebra 1 review, but in case you've forgotten. So first we have to find the slope. It helps if you want to label these. You don't have to, but it does kind of help sometimes. So in this case we'll say 4 minus 8, because that's how we've labeled y2 and y1, over 5 minus a negative 3, which means I have negative 4, that becomes plus, over 8, which is going to be negative 1/2. Alright, now we want to pick one of these points. I picked the one that's everything's positive. So I have y minus 4 is equal to negative 1/2 x minus 5, which would then be y minus 4 is equal to negative 1/2 x plus 5/2. Now we've got a fraction. So what are you going to do? We're going to add the 4 across. So we have y equals, some of it depends on what your answers are in the star, whether they want it in standard form or whatever. So now we have y equals, but this 4 we need to change to halves. So instead of 4, I'm going to write 8/2, because 8/2 is the same as 4, and that gives me a common denominator that allows me to add it to the 5. So then my final answer will be y equals negative 1/2 x plus 13/2. And I need to figure out how to put that in here where it's not going to interfere with the other problem. Y equals negative 1/2 x plus 13/2. That's kind of crunched in there, but it's not too bad. Let me erase this because it interferes with my other problem. Alright, so that is the answer to number 11. 12 is the same kind of problem. First find your slope. So we're going to say x1, y1, x2, y2. And so my slope is 0 minus a negative 4 over 2 minus 2, which gives me 4 over 0. Well, it's a problem because we can't have 0 in the denominator, so that means my slope is undefined. Well, hopefully you remember that the kind of line that has an undefined slope is a vertical line, and a vertical line has the equation x equals some number, and we notice that our x's, if you look, our x's are the same, so that makes it easy. X equals 2. Okay, so if you end up with a 0 in the denominator, you can still get an answer. Don't put no, not there, or no answer. It's just a vertical line. Alright, here we're already given a point and a slope, so we don't have to find the slope. We know what it is. So we go straight to point slope form. Y minus 2 is equal to 3 times x minus a negative 5. Well, that minus a negative 5 we can change, and that's going to become plus 5. So y minus 2 is equal to 3x plus 15. Then we're going to add 2 across. So y is equal to 3x plus 17. Okay. Now when you're given a table, there's some ways to do this in the calculator, and we're going to look at that on one of the star reviews. But the way you would do it by hand, you remember you find the difference in y's and the difference in x's. So this goes down 4, so it's minus 4. 9 minus 3 is 6. Or 9 minus 6 will be 3, and then the difference here is another negative 6. 4 to negative 2 is plus 2. Negative 2 to 1 is plus 3. And 1 to 4 is plus 3. Now you need to find the slope. And the slope is the change in y over the change in x. Difference in y over the difference in x. So what we've got negative 4 over 2. We've got a negative 6 over 3 and another negative 6 over 3. Well, all of those are the same. They all come out to be negative 2. So our slope is negative 2. Then you pick a point. Doesn't matter which point. I'm going to pick this one. Whoops, that didn't work too well. Let me get rid of that. Narrow that down so it's more defined. I'm going to use this one right here. And that's the reason I'm using that one. Is a fairly low number and they're both positive. So then I put that point and use this slope in the point slope form. Y minus 3 is equal to negative 2 times x minus 1. So y minus 3 is equal to negative 2x plus 2. Then I'm going to add 3 to both sides. And y is equal to negative 2x plus 5. Okay. And lastly, on this page, and the last one for this recording, we've got passing through these points. So we're going to find a slope. Negative 2 minus a negative 2 over 9 minus 5. And that's if this is x1, y1, and x2, y2. So this becomes plus. So negative 2 plus 2 is 0 over 9 minus 5 is 4. So this, with a 0 in the numerator, the slope is 0. Well, a zero slope line is a horizontal line. And so a horizontal line has the equation y equals some number. So you go and you look at your y's and see that both y's are the same. So y equals negative 2.